Welcome to the Daily Boogie.
And we're back. Little food for thought there. I've often said to people, it's not about, people are like, I don't like this guy, or I don't like this guy in the media, or, I don't like this particular politician because X, Y, and Z, he's not perfect, she's too narky, whatever reason. But it's not about those things. It's about effectiveness. How effective are you? And until people start to become effective, like their enemies, then they will continue to be trampled over. Cold, hard reality. Speaking of cold, hard reality, inequality and the rise of the oligarchy. Let's go. The Bernie Sanders Forum. Let's check it out. See what they got to say for themselves.
All right. Describe for our audience how it happens that not only here in the Congress now, but in state after state, the needs of working people are ignored, the needs of the wealthy and powerful are addressed.
Well, first of all, I think it's important to say that it's not a partisan issue. As you said, a majority of both Republicans and Democrats support a higher minimum wage, support a right to paid sick leave, think that Citizens United should be overturned, and a bunch of other things. And the corporate lobbies are not cheerleaders for the Republican Party. They want more money and power for themselves, and they're not hesitant about going after pro-working people Republicans. In Michigan, when Right to Work, which is a law that's designed to kill unions in the private sector, was passed, the Senate Majority Leader, who was a Republican, was opposed to it. And he was taken in a back room with big money donors who essentially said, do what we say, or this will be your last term in office, because we'll pull our money from you and we'll fund a primary opponent. I think we just saw that in the Congress with the tax cut. Nobody was for the tax cut. Trump voters were not for the tax cut.
No.
The Republicans said, we're told by our donors.
Trump voters weren't for the tax cut. Did you hear that? You silly Trump voters. Even you didn't want the tax cut. Remember those crumbs? Hate the tax cut. Don't want it. Not interested. Just tell the people. You just tell your opponents what they want.
Or we won't be back here because they'll fund an opponent to
They
us
said
in the
it
primary.
openly. And that
Openly?
wasn't the end. I mean, think about that. They
Think about
actually
it.
openly got quoted saying, we have to deliver on tax cuts for the donors.
Yes.
Or they won't be back again.
It's almost like saying we have to raise welfare for our voters, otherwise they won't vote for us. We have to take more taxes from the taxpayers to give to our voters, otherwise they'll turn on us. It's almost like that, but not quite. See, because we, Elizabeth Warren, we are good, we are well-natured, we are humble, we have only the best of intentions. Effectiveness does not matter to us. We operate only on virtue and virtue alone. We only do what's best for everybody. And we never, ever, ever, ever worry about how to be effective in winning votes and gaining power. Never. We're like Jesus. We are Jesus. We're better than Jesus because, I'm a female. And Jesus is the ultimate patriarchal monster, obviously.
We need to call this out for what it is.
Call it
is
out.
Corruption.
It's corruption.
Plain and simple.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah.
And what I find so powerful about your point is that this is an organized effort just simply to take over our government. Take over our government.
Take over our government. The previous president was literally an organizer. That's what they stamp on his fucking resume. This was an organized effort. In a couple of minutes, Michael Moore will say, you need to organise to overthrow this president. This was an organised effort to take over our government. We need to organise to take back the government. Yay! Woo! Because we're only virtuous and noble and humble and we only have the best of intentions, we don't worry about effectiveness.
Federal level, take over our government, state level, and make the government work better and better for a thinner and thinner rich slice in America.
Yes.
And it's the campaign contra.
Under Barack Obama, the gap between the richest and the poorest grew more than any other presidency in history. The top 3% got 97% of all of the gains made in economic growth and GDP. Under Barack, we only act with virtuous intentions. We don't worry about effectiveness. We tell the truth like Jesus. We are humble. We care. We care.
Contributions. We talk about those. But it's
talk
so
about
much more than that.
More.
It's the fact that they can hire armies of lobbyists. You know, I still remember back following the financial crash.
I mean, we can still hire armies of lobbyists. Remember when Donald Trump said we need to get rid of the lobbyists? And they were all like, no, you can't do that. That's not fair. What have you got against lobbyists? Because that was the position yesterday, and this is the position today. Why? Again, because we're humble. We have only the best of intentions. We don't care about effectiveness. We just play it straight. We tell the truth because we're like Jesus.
When you would have expected that the banks, having just gotten bailed out by the American taxpayers, would just be a little bit chagrined, just a little embarrassed to show up in the halls. No. They spent...
It'd be like, you know, a woman of European descent showing up to some kind of tribal meeting, I imagine, and waiting for the speaking stick to be passed around. It'd be incredibly embarrassing.
$1 million a day lobbying against basic financial reforms, lobbying against the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I still remember, because this is when I was still a teacher, I come down to Washington to try to fight for the consumer agency, and literally the lobbyists would come by in such big herds
of lobbyists.
Of people in hand-tailored suits. And
if anybody knows about wild herds of lobbyists on the prairie, it's Elizabeth Warren. Absolutely. Never doubt that kind of, never doubt that lineage, that inborn knowledge of the herd. I mean, you can't teach it. You're born with it. Allegedly. Maybe.
You know, handmade loafers that you kind of had to lean back against the hallway and let it go down the hallway.
It's a stampede!
It matters.
Like the buffalo, yes.
That there is this huge lobbying apparatus on the side of corporations, on the side of money, on the side of giant banks. Who's there for the folks who get cheated?
The folks who get cheated. Let's ask... Who's there for the folks who get cheated? I don't know. Let's ask the guy who charges $15 for one of those DVDs. Michael Moore.
You raised an issue, and Gordon did as well. This ain't just the Republicans.
That's right.
All right. How does it happen? The big money.
I think Bernie Sanders does the best Larry King impression that I've ever seen in my life. Like, there is no other. Like, I don't know. If you put Larry King up alongside Bernie Sanders, you can't even tell the difference. Look at that. Incredible. Good evening, America.
Can dominate both political parties. What do we do about it?
I was at the Oscars a couple years ago.
Ah, yeah. What a better place to gauge the rampant oligarchy and inequality that the poor, downtrodden American taxpayer has to put up with as they're being trampled by a herd of lobbyists. Greedy lobbyist oligarchs. Like a herd of wild buffalo across the prairie, as Elizabeth Warren would only know. Like I said, she's born with this knowledge. This is passed down from generation to generation to generation. to university acceptance form. Yeah, it can't be taught. And what a better place to tap into this raw, imperfect, emotional rising of the poor downtrodden than at the Oscars, where Botox and high heels are the order of the day. I don't know, maybe Michael spoke to the guy working in the buffet. Maybe he had to pinch a loaf and there was an immigrant worker in there washing people's hands because they don't like to touch the taps themselves. The beautiful people of the world. Maybe that's where he had the conversation about the oligarchy and the downtrodden. Who knows? He's a man of the people, Michael Moore. Just because I'm a millionaire documentary maker doesn't mean I'm not in touch with the common man. I mean, I was at the Oscars a couple of years ago and I ran into a lovely gentleman in the washroom, and as he was soaping up my particularly flabby fingers, it took him about 25 minutes, so we managed to have a good chat as he was toweling me off. And, we spoke about the inequalities in America and why it's so unfair that the oligarchs and the herds of lobbyists are trampling the little guy like him. And I decided to make a difference. I decided at that point that I'm going to be humble and virtuous and have only the best of intentions. And I'm going to be like Jesus. Because it's not about effectiveness. We don't worry about those Machiavellian things like effectiveness. No. We just come at it with the best of intentions because we care.
I get tapped on the shoulder.
Tapped on the shoulder.
And it's the CEO of Goldman Sachs. And he says to me, why are you attacking us? We're Democrats. He says to me, we're Democrats.
Yeah, I'm sure that happened.
I said, I know that. I know that you are the largest single private contributor to President Obama. Thank you for that, by the way. But
thanks for your money, but I hate you.
You're expecting something, and he was like appalled at this. If you look at the money that goes to support Democratic candidates, and we were talking with Catherine backstage in Alabama, how they come in with the money, and whether the representatives are Democrats or Republicans, they go for the money.
The money.
And it's one of the hardest things that we have, those of us working on these issues.
Yes.
That how do you fight the money? And the only way you fight it is you have to have the votes and the people. Because what I said to the chairman of Goldman Sachs was, I said, it's really got to bother you that with all the money you and your Wall Street friends have, when you go in that voting booth and you pull that curtain, you only have one vote.
Oh, no.
Each of you just have one vote.
Just one.
And there's more of us than there are of you.
It's really got to bother Michael Moore that he has to pay for 2 plane tickets, but he only gets 1 vote. Like, I'm twice the man you are.
That's got to frighten you every single night. The only way out of this is with the bucks that you put into this system to make it corrupt, to make it sick. And sooner or later, the people aren't going to take it anymore. And that'll be the end of it. Have a good time at the Oscars.
Yay. My hero. What an anecdote.
He did not make it. In fact, when I went to make my next film, because Goldman Sachs is an investor of that studio, they said, we're sorry, we can't do this because of the Goldman Sachs people on the board. And I was not able to make that next film. I went someplace else. But no, they affect me, they affect you, they affect all of us. They're everywhere.
See, I'm just like you. I wasn't able to make my multi-million-dollar picture because some guy from Goldman Sachs realized that I was going to say bad things about Goldman Sachs. I had to go somewhere else and make my multi-million-dollar picture. So you see, the oligarchy affects me just like it affects you. Yes. Get that up, ya. Jose in the coat room. He had a very similar situation. He was trying to make a multi-million-dollar documentary one day, and someone from Goldman Sachs called him up on the phone and said, "I'm sorry, Jose, we can't make this movie. We can't pay for it for you. We're going to have to pull that check back, and because you're talking about us." So Jose had to go down to the next production suite. He was allowed on the lot, obviously, and he went down to the next production house. And they agreed to make the movie for him. So it was a slight, very, very slight, how would you say, a very nominal, slight inconvenience. I mean, I was slightly inconvenienced in the financing of my film. I mean, I got it out anyway. I went to someone else. But that affected me. And the oligarchy's running rampant like a herd of buffalo, trampling the little guy, like me, Michael Moore. Figuratively speaking, of course. And, it's just not fair. I'm no better than a toilet cleaner. Sure, I've got couple of $1 million mansions. I'm a household name, and my investment portfolio is packed to the brim with 7 figures. But at the end of the day, you guys know this as well as I do. When you're making a multi-million-dollar documentary, you can be attacked by Goldman Sachs at any time. They've got way too much power. You might literally have to find someone else to pay for the movie. You've got no idea the kind of oppression that these people are exacting on us. The humble, the meek, the mild, the Jesus-like folk at the Oscars.
And they are those creepy. What's the name of that movie with not the Battlestar? What's the
Creepy Crawly?
The movie with the creepy.
The movie.
On the planet.
The movie.
With the sand. They come out of the sand.
Yeah, the sand. Yeah.
That one middle of it right now.
Big movie buff. I can see why he was invited to the Oscars with this wealth of knowledge just spewing out of him. Yeah. Michael, who do you think's going to win the Oscar? The movie with the creepy things, and they come out of the sand, and the movie. The one that was funded by Goldman Sachs? Yes! The movie. It's like, shit, can we get this guy on the voting panel? This is a man who knows his movies.
Derek, money in politics.
Money in
What's going
politics.
I mean,
Yeah.
Michael is so quick around.
ask me something about economics, not creepy crawlers. But
Creepy crawlers. That's fantastic. All right, we might leave them there. Thanks for that, Mike. Ladies and gentlemen, Michael Moore and the wacky crew of oligarch fighters. I hope you survive the herd long enough to get back to... You'll get back to the Oscars one day, Michael. Just to show the little guy that you care.